Welcome to Myth Informs podcast. I am your host, Brian Edward, and next to me, Sean Frasick will be sitting down eventually. But we brought on Mr. David C. Smalley, who I really wanted to talk to. We have been on his show, formerly Dogma Debate, a couple times. Now the David C. Smalley Show. Been in the atheist community a long time. I think I first met him at Gateway to Reason back in 2017, 16, something like that, with Faisal Al-Matar and some others. But he'd been kind of a big thought leader in the atheist community. Now he's talking a little bit more about atheism as well as some social political issues. And we bumped into him on Twitter, where he commented on a number of his posts and was like, hey, guys, we should talk. I'm a normal liberal voice here, and I'm not being listened to. So we thought that's what we do. We listen to people, and we wanted to bring them on because I think the best conversations are not those that you agree with, are often those that you disagree with. Welcome, David. What did you want to talk about?
Thanks for having me, first of all, man. I appreciate you guys doing this. Slight correction, it was actually Instagram where we were bumping into one another. And I was basically, look, I was with you guys during the Mythicist Milwaukee thing. You know, I was there for all that craziness, and I had your back.
The MythCon 4, I think, is what you're talking about.
I was a part of. What's that?
The MythCon 4. That's what you're talking about. The craziness around MythCon 4.
Yeah, I just called it Mythicist Milwaukee because that's what most of us called it. But yeah, you're right, MythCon 4. And I was there for the one after the big one, but I did a lot of defending of the one where Sargon was there, and there was the big storm out from the Thomas or whatever, and I defended you guys the entire time, and people kept telling me, no, those guys are right wing, like extreme right wing guys, they're conspiracy theorists, they're crazy, and I was like, no, they're not. They're interested in diversity of thought, and I defended you guys, and slowly over time, I'm starting to see like I get the concepts of. I think you have one. Better Discourse, you've got one Engage in Something Real, and you've really pushed this idea about diversity of thought, which I love. But then a lot of the posts were like just obviously straw man, like silly things, almost like if you're just being comedians, like you're just trying to be funny and it's satirical. And it's almost as if over time, diversity of thought has just turned into let's shit on liberals. And I don't really get that. I don't see how that drives the conversation forward. I don't see how that invites dialogue of people you disagree with. So it seems that the mantra is there, and I love that because that's what I do on my show. But it seems that the actions that you're actually taking on social media aren't inviting to any of those missions or values and seem to just be shitting on liberals and using the worst the left has to offer as if that's what the left is. So I came here today to clear some of that up and see if we can move forward.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. So, no, you have to we have to make a little bit of a distinction, I think, between conferences like MythCon 4, MythCon 5, and Minds IRL, Better Discourse, where we go out of our way to have heterodox views and on stage. So we'll reach out to the people on the right and the left, try to balance them as easily as we can. Yeah. Now, Instagram and Twitter are not Minds IRL or MythCon or Better Discourse. Yeah. It's a little bit different. It's kind of like on your show, right? You're an atheist, right? You have a lot of good reasons for this. It makes sense. I think at one point you were religious. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you're not expected to kind of hold up the point of view of which you don't agree. So it's going to be you to come out and say, okay, this is what a Christian thinks or believes. However, you do often invite onto your podcast those that do believe, and you have reasonable conversations with them, which I think is great. So it's the same way. So does the Twitter feed, does the Instagram have a certain bias? Sure. But we also are people that have a certain bias. But what we want to do is bring in heterodox views. We'll talk to anyone on the podcast that thinks differently. Obviously, for our main events, it's absolutely essential that we get people who will argue that really believe their viewpoints.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And my Twitter is obviously one-sided, but I make damn sure I stay factually accurate on my social media. And if I make mistakes or I make overstatements and I get corrected on those, I usually apologize for saying it wrong. I thank the person for helping me, and I delete the post.
Mm-hmm.
That happened not too long ago, actually, and I'm really proud of that moment. And the person completely disagrees with me, is a very hardcore Trump supporter, and we still talk politely quite often. And they were right about something, and I was wrong about something. But like you guys have posted that, like on the Jacob Blake thing, that
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Blake was kidnapping 3 children in a stolen car when he got shot. I mean,
he 100% was
categorically false.
No,
that's not according to us. That's according to CNN.
No. He 100% was. He 100%. So, David, we've actually been intimate with the Kenosha thing. We actually went down there after the riots, literally the day after Rittenhouse, that whole thing. But we talked to the locals and stuff. We actually raised $8,000 for the small businesses, which we were really proud of.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and we're just devastated. It's $11 million in damage to a really small city. That's right near us. But no, those facts around the case are 100% accurate. He had the lady that. So this is the scenario, and you can read about it.
I have.
Okay.
I have.
Yeah, because
I've been on PolitiFact, factcheck.org. I watched her personal private interview she gave to a news station.
Sure.
I'm very aware of the case. I know exactly what you're talking about. She called because he took her car keys, not her car. And he wouldn't give her keys back to her. She called police. He stayed there and the police showed up.
Right.
So it's not like he was in a stolen car kidnapping children.
So,
that was super misleading by putting it that way on Instagram, wouldn't you say?
No. So he actually was kidnapping 1 or 2 of the kids that were in the back, and they're actually her kids. And the car was not her car. It was a different stolen car. And he actually just got done stealing another woman's credit card, which he or ATM card, which he stole money out of the ATM on the way there. So this is, and it's all going to come out. We're waiting on the trial that's coming up. What's that?
Okay, hold on. So how do you have? Okay, first of all, I want to be clear that I am not defending Jacob Blake. I do realize he had 3rd-degree sexual assault, a warrant for his arrest. I know he's not the greatest stand-up citizen. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
My issue originally was how the police responded to him the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
There should have, when someone is that close to you, if you're going to pull your gun out, you're supposed to make distance between. I mean, anybody with a concealed carry permit knows this, let alone a police officer.
Sure.
You have to put distance between you and the person. You don't just, if I'm refusing to listen to you and you're 3 feet away from me, I'm trained to go hands-on with you with both of my hands free, not both of my hands on a firearm, right? So that's part of the problem. The way the officers responded, if they would have both grabbed him physically, he would have never made it to the car door. And he wouldn't be paralyzed right now, right? The way they handled that was terrible.
Okay.
But the guy, and by the way, I fact-checked a lot of the stuff through this. The information that's available to the fact-checkers, and when I say that, I mean PolitiFact, I mean factcheck.org and NPR. These sources.
Right. I was to say,
some of the stuff that you're saying, I can't verify. I don't see it anywhere. So do you have information that's not been made available to the public yet?
So here's the thing. I will neither confirm nor deny that. But CNN did an exclusive interview with the attorney for Shesky, the officer that shot Blake. They did. The attorney gave an exclusive interview to CNN, and all those facts came out in there. So I don't know if you read that one. That was
what I read was the factcheck.org piece on the interview. And they said that a lot of the things that the attorney said have not been verifiable. As a matter of fact, the attorney for the Blake family has flat out called the attorney for the police association a liar and saying he's feeding this information to the media.
Of course. And that's obviously that's the game they play, right? But this attorney was very very upfront with this information, saying, look, we typically don't do this, but because of the case, because of the size of this thing, that's why I'm coming out and giving this interview for Shesky. And we've talked to locals. We've been on the ground, and we've talked to the people that have been affected by this. Brian actually talked to Blake's uncle. So this is what we're hearing on the ground. This is what the attorney has said. So we're going based off of that. Now, I agree with you. it's going to have to go to court. But let me ask you this question.
Okay.
So Blake made Blake's walking away with $2.3 million in this GoFundMe. The victim, the woman saying that he raped her, again, we should believe the victim, right? She didn't get anything. She got 3 traumatized children back, right? So is that fair? Is that justice? I mean, that's the question, and that's what we were trying to highlight with that post. I mean, this is a terrible scenario for her and her kids, and this guy was not a saint. Is that a fair scenario?
And we referenced the CNN article here, and the headline says lawyer says cop shot Jacob Blake after hearing mother, and this immediately popped.
He's got
hearing mother's desperate plea. He's got my kid. He's got my keys.
And then there's witnesses to
right.
that.
And so that's a CNN article. It's not exactly a right-wing
Right.
outlet.
So are you saying that the car he was in was stolen from someone else?
Yes.
And that's just not available to any of the fact checkers yet?
Correct. Yes.
How do you have information that's not available to the public?
I can't say. I can't. Okay. Unfortunately,
so,
I can't.
I guess the way the post looked to me, and I'll acknowledge, Sean, that that's not a fair situation. She's obviously a sexual assault victim. This guy was obviously doing something he shouldn't have been doing, right? Mm-hmm. And they were there to serve a warrant. He wasn't supposed to be around her. I assume she probably had a protective order granted, and they were probably there acting on that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm glad the cops showed up, right? They were there to protect her.
Yeah.
But when she was interviewed, this woman that is technically his victim, like from the previous sexual assault, she was infuriated with the police for how they treated Jacob Blake.
Okay.
And your Instagram post painted this picture, and why I call it extremely misleading, is that he was kidnapping children in a stolen car. Cops show up, bang, 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 save the day, right? She was yelling at the cops, let me get my kids out of the car.
Sure.
Why are y'all doing this? Why
Sure.
aren't you grabbing him? Why aren't you arresting him?
Sure.
And she was furious with him. And immediately after the shooting, she was screaming. There's YouTube videos of her being so upset with the officers for how they treated what she said. She said, that's my fiance. She didn't say ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
So they must have been going through some stuff. I realize there's some court documents. I've been through a divorce where things happened. I get it. But it's not like she was a damsel in distress in that moment. They had to shoot him to save her, right? She was furious with how the police handled that.
Okay, so let's talk about the way the police handle that. So they show up. They get this distress call. They're responding to a call of a known someone that has a warrant out for sexual assault by the victim. That is the alleged victim. Right?
They knew he had a warrant.
They knew he had a warrant. They show up. They and this is what the video didn't show. Like the police are showing up. They're trying to talk to him. They're trying to get him under control. They tase him twice. Right. Neither tase works. He gets up and he goes. Now he goes back to the vehicle. Right. And you're right. I mean, you're right in the sense that maybe...
He never should have made it that far.
Sure.
He never should have made it that far. Like, these cops are standing there. He walks right in front of them, and then they start walking after him with their guns out.
Sure.
I'm with terrible tactical decision-making on the cops' behalf.
We have to be careful when we start judging the police because, remember, I mean, they're doing their job. They also have families they have to worry about. If you start tackling someone to the ground, you don't know what they have on them. You don't know how dangerous they are.
No, I won't accept that at all, Sean. Okay. They swear to protect and serve. It's a dangerous job.
Sure.
If you don't want to go hands-on with people to save their lives, don't put the badge on.
Sure. So
period.
Again, I don't like blaming the police in this scenario because Blake did everything wrong instead of just talking to the police. And this is why he did it. And I know why he did it. When you have a warrant out for your arrest, when you're in a stolen vehicle, when you just stole someone's credit card, and you have kids that don't belong to you in the back of your car, you're going away for a long time. So I know what's going on in his head. That's why he's not complying, right? So when he goes into the car and to grab something, and there's children in the back seat, David, let me ask you this. These things go sideways real quick. The police didn't necessarily know there was a knife in there. They didn't. It could have been a gun. What if he goes in that car, picks up a gun, turns around, starts shooting at them, the kids get hit in the crossfire? What happens then?
No, you're proving my point. The cops should have never let him get that far. Well, that's my point, man. There are people. Look, dude, there are issues all the time where a guy gets pulled over, a white guy in a big truck. There's videos of this where a white guy in a big souped up truck gets pulled over. He throws his door open, jumps out of the car, starts walking toward the cop screaming. He doesn't get shot. The cop's like, get back in your car, get back in your car. The white guy's like, fuck you, pig, you fucking asshole. Then he gets back in his car and slams the door, and the cop walks up and gently gives him a ticket.
Sure.
But what baseball player doesn't has never recorded a fielding error? Right? It's Bill Buckner. He should have fielded that thing to first base. He should have Game 6 should have been over. But it went right through his legs. Like sometimes you don't get
these
it.
Are human.
Sure.
These are human lives, not baseballs, bro.
So, you expect a cop
to
be perfect?
No, what I would say here too is the police. The police, their lives are human as well, and they have families. They have people depending on them. If Jacob Blake would have just complied to begin with, which I know again why he didn't, because of everything that was stacked up. He knows he's going away for a long time. And I get what you're saying, David. You know, could they have tried to tackle him? He just walked away from 2 tase shots. I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, that takes a lot to get tased twice and just get up and keep walking.
Well, no, it doesn't really. What probably happened was they misfired or they didn't completely connect with him. He didn't just take 50,000 volts like a champ. They probably only one prong went in or one got stuck on his shirt. That 99% of the time when someone doesn't respond to a taser, it's because of a misfire or something doesn't really connect all the way.
Well, and
so
we don't know.
Like
again, that's going to come out in the court. That's going to come out in trial, right? We don't know exactly, right?
Right. But again, so tasers are imperfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, obviously it's a terrible scenario. You never want to see anyone go through it, especially, I mean, think of the kids. The true victims here are the kids, right? They didn't do anything wrong, and now they've been traumatized by this whole experience. That was, you know, I think he definitely was the father of, I don't know if it's one or two of them, but he's the father of at least one of them. Think of yourself. You're the father. You're setting a role model to your kid. You just showed up at a woman's house that you supposedly, allegedly raped, right? And you're not complying with the police. You're doing all these terrible things. I mean, think about that scenario. I don't think Chesky, the officer, Rustin Chesky, he didn't want to show up to shoot him. Why didn't Blake just comply? Think so either. Right? Why didn't Blake just comply?
Listen, and that's where when the people on my side of things on the left start screaming that police officers are hunting black people.
Right.
I can't get on board with that. When they're holding up the signs that say ACAB, I'm like, come on, guys. That's just not reality. And by the way, that's not Joe Biden's position either. But you guys, a lot of times on your feed, you paint with such a broad brush as though these extreme, silly views on the left is what Joe Biden's running on.
Sure.
I mean, you guys said that Rainn Wilson joined. You guys said that Rainn Wilson joined a racist cult.
Oh, white fragility cult.
Funny?
Oh no, I mean, if you're pushing we got into a lot of topics there, dude.
But really,
if you're pushing white fragility, that is a racist.
But let's hold
cult.
off on white fragility for just a second. Rainn Wilson is Dwight from The Office.
Yeah.
But what Joe Biden did say was he said there's no doubt that there's systemic racism within policing. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now that's okay. That would be like somebody saying, I'm 100% sure there's a God.
I verifiable statement.
I don't think that's true. So take Freddie Gray in Baltimore, right? Freddie Gray's shot in Baltimore. It starts the Baltimore riots in, I think, 2016, right?
He wasn't shot. He wasn't shot in Baltimore.
Okay. Black mayor. Chief of police is black. Number 2 cop is black. Majority black.
Please understand.
City council.
Understand that when.
How is this systemic racism?
Okay, that's just a complete blind spot, dude. Let me help you out with that because I can clear it up very simply. Systemic means overall in the system, statistics skew against a particular type of person. It does not mean that the individual people running the system have to be racist in order to support a racist system. There are a lot of things that are just implicitly biased, and we don't even understand why.
So we could have a systemically racist system without a single racist.
Right. Let him. Sorry. Let's be fair here. You're the moderator.
Are you guys familiar with the monkey and the ladder experiment, where they basically put these monkeys out? They may have been chimps, actually. I don't know if they were chimps or monkeys, but let's just say monkeys for now. They put these monkeys in chimps. They were chimps. they put these chimps in this enclosure with a ladder, and there were treats. I think there were bananas or something at the top of the ladder. And every time a chimp would try to climb the ladder, they would get sprayed with a water hose,
Okay.
and they would drop off, and it's terrifying for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, by the way, they would all get sprayed with a water hose when one chimp tried to go up the ladder, and then one by one they would start replacing the monkeys, right? They would start replacing them. And what happened was the new monkey would come in and start to go up the ladder, or the new chimp would come in and try to go up the ladder, and the other chimps would grab him and beat on his ass because you're going to get us all sprayed if you go up there.
Okay.
Right? Slowly but surely, they replaced all the chimps, none of whom had ever been sprayed with water, and they were still beating each other's ass for trying to climb the ladder.
Okay.
Why? This learned behavior was passed down through these, symbolized generations, right, of replacing people. And the concept is this is just how things are done. This is just what it is. Black people are just dangerous. Black people are violent. Black neighborhoods need more policing. And it's just this idea overall that even Black officers are on record saying that they are more likely to be more likely to go hands-on or pull a gun on a Black person for the same issue that a white person is doing. So it's this concept that it's learned behavior over decades and decades and decades. It's embedded into the training. It's embedded into what America sees as dangerous. How many guys have you heard telling a story, and then to exaggerate it, they'll say something like, and then this big Black guy? Why? Why say that? It's about this concept of scary and big and super predator and dangerous. That's how the system is. And if you look at the court documents, if you look at the arrest records, if you look at the amount of drug use and drug charges, white people and Black people use drugs at the same statistical rate, yet Blacks are arrested far more often. Cops are more likely to go hands-on with Black people. Cops are more likely to point guns at Black people. Why? There's a problem in the system, and that does not mean all cops are bad or every cop is hunting a Black person.
Okay. Fair. You want to take that one, Bray?
Well, I just so you're talking about like some kind of narrative that's passed down, right? But take the narrative of Goodfellas, right? I see Italians and Irish, all white people put in, and we talk a narrative, and Scorsese does this, and that Italians are this and Irish are that, and like these are all white people, right? To me, like you could say, well, there's mafia bias in policing, like because I guess we're creating this narrative. I don't know, maybe out of thin air, because it's just weird for me to say you could have systemic racism in a police department without actually having a single racist.
No,
this is something else. Why don't we call it just X or something? Systemic racism, when that doesn't need a single racist,
right?
That's the wrong word.
Okay, well let me just ask you a question then.
Sure.
If you can show a court documents from, let's say, a year.
Sure.
And we pulled up every marijuana possession. That's all it is, marijuana possession. Sure. And I show you all of the white guys got an average of 90 days in jail. And if you're Black, on average, you got 6 months in jail.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that a problem in the system?
So maybe not enough evidence.
So let me speak from experience here, because I grew up in Chicago, David, and I was kind of a problem child in my early teens. I got into trouble with the law a lot of times. And it was over things like that, like marijuana, right? It's not on my permanent record, but I was juvenile. You know how that goes. And this is the way the system works. This is where, when people talk about Black people and white people and Asian people and all these people being treated differently, I experienced good police. I experienced terrible police. One day I was just walking across the street. A police officer almost ran me over with his car. I was just crossing the street. He threw me in the back of his car. He was speeding to get to an old lady that got pulled over for a parking ticket, right? Almost killed me for that. So he threw me in the back of the car, took me to the station, and was going to press assault charges on me, even though I never touched him or did anything, right? Asshole cop, right? So I went, I reported him, I got his badge number, all that stuff. I reported him, and I was talking to the chief, and she said, yeah, he's known for doing that. And I said, well, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, what do you mean he's known for doing this? Like, this is terrible. But there are bad apples in the police department. But the way the system works, when you get pulled when you get stopped with marijuana, when you get stopped with a weapon or whatever, it goes based on how many prior offenses that you have, right? So
Right.
if
Exactly.
if you get pulled over and you have weed and it's your first offense, you're gonna get potentially, these days it's like nothing, it's like a ticket. But back in our day in the 90s, it was, you're gonna get you're gonna get held, you're going to the holding cell, and you're going to have your court date. Now, if you have another instance, even though this was a minor instance, let's say you have another minor instance, now you're going to be held longer. Now you're going to do potentially, you're facing more time. And then as you keep going, it stacks up, right? It keeps stacking. So the best solution for anyone in those scenarios is to stop doing those things. And it fucking sucks. I get it. But also there is a protocol when you're dealing with the police. You learn this, like in Chicago, we learned this real quick. It didn't matter what skin color you were, you listen to the fucking police because they will jam you. They will jam you up. They can do whatever the fuck I've seen police plant shit on people, and this is me now backing the police as an older adult, because I know there's some bad apples, but I know the system can work. But there's a protocol. The protocol is not when you get pulled over, you start raising your hands and you start getting the officer's face and stuff. No, you listen and you do what you're told. Jacob Blake is a perfect example of not doing that. George Floyd, perfect example, not doing that. There's a protocol when you're dealing with the police, and yeah, it fucking sucks, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you can have terrible, terrible circumstances. And we learned that as kids in Chicago, but I'll let you respond. But that's something we learned, and that's something we're not seeing happen anymore. There's no more respect for the police, and I think that's part of the issue.
Well, there's so much there, so I hope you guys give me a chance
No,
to
go
really
for
dive
it.
into this.
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So the first thing is these things that you're talking about. I had a similar conversation with Dave Silverman about this, right? Not listening to the police, not complying with orders is illegal. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the death penalty, right? We don't have a system where we say, if you don't do what a cop says 3 times in a row, we are going to paralyze you for the rest of your life. That would be considered inhumane, right? So we don't want to live. I don't think any of us ever want to live, regardless of our skin color, in a society that goes by comply or die, right? Yeah, I know you might get roughed up. Yeah, you might, right? But there are also a whole lot of cops who abuse that power, who approach the situation with their chest out and their thumbs in their belts and get really shitty and talk down to you and tell you to shut your fucking mouth, boy, and just are just degrading as hell because they have the badge, they know they have the authority, and they tell you to change your damn attitude or your ass will go to jail. And they talk to you like you're a child.
Yep.
Imagine if you were harassed 3.5 times more likely than you were at the time. Imagine how that's got to wear on your psyche. How long will you deal with that before you say, fuck the police, I'm going to swing on this guy, right? I'm never saying it's a good idea, but our police should be de-escalating things and community policing with respect, with proper training, and with love to protect and serve, not to show up as a police state and dominate like you're the Taliban in the middle of Pakistan, right? Sure. We don't want to give them that much power. I don't want to live in a neighborhood where a Humvee with LA police is rolling down the street. What are you doing here? I don't want to be occupied by a police force. And as far as your situation of priors goes, I agree with you 100%. I've talked about this multiple times on my podcast. You're exactly right. More priors get you more attention.
Yep.
Well, let's break that down. Let's say white guy, black guy, they smoke weed at the same statistical rate. But in Oakland, I believe the last study that came out, a black driver was 63% more likely to be pulled over than a white driver. That was just in Oakland Police Department.
Sure.
So why? For the same offense. So if that means if a white guy doesn't use a turn signal and a black guy doesn't use a turn signal, 63% more likely they're going to pull over the black guy but let the white guy go. Well, what happens when that black guy gets pulled over more often, but they both have weed in their cars? Well, now the black guy has a prior and the white guy drove off with weed in his car.
Sure.
Okay. So if the cops are knocking on your door more, if they're driving around your neighborhoods more, if they're harassing you more, if they're pulling you over more, if they're more likely to go hands on, they're more likely to put their hands in your pockets. If they're more likely to put their hands in your pockets, they're more likely to find your pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's no statistics to show that whites or blacks use drugs more often.
Sure.
But black people make up a huge percentage of drug offenses in prison and convictions.
Mm-hmm.
So if they've already been harassing you for the last 4 years, you're much more likely to have more priors than the white guy, right?
Sure.
So then after 3 or 4 or 5 of those, there's a guy like you on the show going, well, he had 4 or 5 priors. Well, how many times was a white guy passed up for him to be targeted because he looks black and dangerous?
Sure.
That's
White
what we need to
person
think
is not
about. This is a
passed up.
larger issue.
Like, there's a difference. Like, you're saying that the cop literally saw a white guy hitting the crack pipe, said, "Yeah, he's white," and then, oh, there's a black guy hitting the crack pipe. I'm
I never
getting
said
him.
that.
No, you're saying
never said that.
passing them
Well,
up.
let me. So
basically, it's
so-
I
the
said
amount
pulled
of
over.
So
I said
yeah.
pulled over.
And I'm with you. Okay, so here's the thing, David. So there's two things happening. First of all, I understand what you're saying with the police state and police not being aggressive. Unfortunately, growing up in Chicago, even in Milwaukee, it's nicknamed Killwalkie for a reason. There's certain areas where unfortunately police are constantly under fire. Because, my first apartment was near the Cook County Jail in Chicago when I was 20. And every single night there's gunshots. Every single night. Every night it was like checking your clock. Like there's going to be gunshots. And we were lucky because we had a basement apartment. But in a lot of those cases, like there's a good chance of like those bullets flying into homes and killing people. So the police in those neighborhoods are constantly under duress. Whether you want to admit it or not, they are, and it's scary. And the people in those neighborhoods actually have way more respect for the police because they know they're needed. Now, secondly, when you talk about people getting pulled over, and this is the interesting thing coming from a diverse city that I was in. So it's funny. So if you're a white guy or Indian, whatever, non-black guy that drives in the south side of Chicago, you get pulled over all the time. And why do you think you get pulled over in those neighborhoods? Let's say you're
perceived out of place.
Let's say you're in Chicago, you're on the south side, you're Cabrini Green, old Cabrini Green, whatever.
It's because you're there to buy drugs.
That's right. And those people got busted constantly. The cops were always on the hunt for people that didn't belong in those neighborhoods, and they got busted several times. I had friends that got busted. And guess what? When the cops pull them over and they had coke or they had weed, they went to jail. And they went to jail on the south side. And it doesn't matter that they're white or Mexican, like I'm Mexican or whatever. They were going to jail. The cops didn't say, oh, you're white. Oh, I know you're coming in this neighborhood. No, they're on the ground. They're searching their car. They're going to jail. Their car's getting towed to the lot. So I've seen it. And we could talk about stats and all this stuff. I lived it. Like I knew those spots.
Well, I mean, that's Sean, but that's your anecdotal experience, and I'm not going to discount it.
You can call it anecdotal.
That's not the whole of statistics overall. What you experience is your experience. What I experience is mine. We were talking about the system, and you can say statistics. Statistics are how we determine that a system is obviously geared differently. So we could look at the stats and go, wow, black people are arrested for this thing more often. It would be logical to assume they commit that crime more often, but they don't. We're doing these things at the same statistical rates.
That's not that logical, though. Like, I mean, if you saw all these people that were tall and then a bunch of people that were short, would you immediately assume that it's the parents not feeding them enough? Right? I mean, somebody that doesn't understand might think that.
Yeah.
In 1800, you might have thought, yeah, well, they did not give them enough food.
Yeah, but and I get your point, David. But here's the thing: as you're growing up in these environments, you learn the system, you learn the rules, you know what you can and can't do, and you can't, if you're getting pulled over by the cops, you can't get out of the car, you can't get in their face, you can't tell them to fuck off, you can't do all the things that we're seeing today, and we're seeing it. And we have to get back to having that etiquette with the police and working with them because, again, their job, they're under duress and a lot. I mean, anyone could pull anything out of a car and kill you, that's...
Right. So let's get into that last piece. Now, I made a note here about the bad apples that you mentioned.
Sure.
That cop that did that to you, has a reputation for doing that all the time.
Yep.
So this bastard was harassing people, nearly running over people, throwing them in the back of the car, threatening them, charging them with things they didn't do wrong.
Yep.
If you file a report in today's America under Trump, and Trump's what he called a police reform plan that really didn't do much, under that plan, that cop could have 35 complaints against him by citizens.
Yep.
And all of those complaints get investigated by someone in internal affairs that he probably knows and goes to lunch with. And there's no database. There's no national database for police complaints.
Sure.
So if the complaints get high enough, he can just quietly resign, go to the city next door, and get hired as a police officer with a brand new clean slate.
Sure.
Biden has said he wants to institute a national database for police investigations and police complaints, so that if you are fired for misconduct or racism or abusing power or unnecessarily roughing people up, you can't just go be a cop in another city and hurt other people. That is a good plan for America.
I thought Trump wanted it. I thought it's in both plans. I thought. Are we sure that Trump is anti-national database?
Donald Trump's plan was to incentivize the database. Biden will enforce the database as an absolute mandate. So under Trump's plan, cops could still choose, or police departments could still choose not to report these things. Under Biden's plan, it automatically happens.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing though. Like when George Floyd first happened, regarding disregarding the circumstances, everything. You had a ton of people, myself included, a ton of people that have lived my experience, that were like, absolutely, we need to reform the police. And part of reforming the police is having more transparency, getting the bad apples out, potentially paying the cops more so you get better talent in, holding police, the bad apples accountable. And I'm 100% on board with that. But when you talk about Biden, this is the issue. Personally, Brian and I have been debating this. I personally think the Democrats lost this election when they decided to call it the Summer of Love and that these riots were nothing to worry about and these are mainly peaceful protests. Even him coming out and saying Antifa is just an idea. This is the problem.
That's gaslighting.
Yeah. So now I'm forced in a position where I got to choose between anarchy or the police. Right? I still support police reform.
I can still
100%.
Hear you. I can still hear you. I have to plug in my laptop. Go
sure.
Make your buddy and I can
Sure. So, like, now I'm in a position where I have to either choose anarchy or supporting the police, and I'm going to bet with the police because I understand how important they are to neighborhoods that are high crime and really need it.
But to be fair, right? Like, anarchy in the police. Joe Biden isn't saying, I want anarchy. But can I say that I distrust the person that cannot, say Antifa is a terrible group?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a layup.
Yeah.
The fact that it makes me distrust it.
Well,
when you say mostly peaceful protests, it makes me distrust you.
But also the fact that how long it took for him to come out and say law and order. Like Trump was smart. Trump was right on that right away. We saw it in Kenosha. In 3 days, they cleared that city of all the chaos that was going on when the troops came in. We were there. And it took only 3 days, and it was all gone. And good for those people that were having their homes and businesses destroyed. That the Democrats should have been on top of all of that, saying, "Look, you can protest, but we have to stop these riots." It took forever for them to start criticizing. Yeah. And I still don't know if Biden said we got to stop the riot. I mean, I've seen him kind of talk about it now, but it should be a harder stance than that. You want to talk about a police state?
I'm wondering if this is because it's like you guys are living in a different universe than I'm in. It
Sure.
honestly feels that way.
Sure.
So I wonder if it's because of the news that you consume differently from me. I really try to expose myself to Fox News and Hannity and
Sure.
Tucker Carlson as much as I can until I vomit. But I try. I try to read the websites and I even go to Breitbart and I've been on the Blaze Network a few times with some conservatives. Here's the thing. Biden was asked explicitly in an interview, do you condemn Antifa? Mm-hmm. His response was, yes, anyone who is violent.
Okay.
That was completely discredited by the right-wing media. They were like, oh, he sidestepped it. Oh, he didn't say it. Does it sound like a logical answer to say, do you condemn Antifa, for the answer to be yes, I condemn Antifa?
No.
It's just bizarre. He said
it's
he
not.
said
They're not.
yes,
It's not the
first of
same
all.
standard.
Yeah.
Here's the reason: Trump has condemned white supremacy on multiple occasions. Yet he has to condemn it again at the debates. And when he says exactly what he said, stand back and stand by. When Chris Wallace himself used the stand back, tell them to stand back. Like, Trump has already done this, but yet it doesn't count.
Right.
So why, when Biden sort of ducks it,
wait,
why can't he say it again?
Wait, David, let me just say this. The
It's
stand
not the
back,
same standard.
stand back, stand by. That I do agree. Trump did not handle that perfectly. That was a layup. He should have dunked that.
Yep.
But Biden, when he said Antifa, and he came out and said they're just an idea. David, do you agree with that? That was on a national debate. Did he handle that right?
Yeah. So I got to be honest, with there being two of you guys, Brian is making a lot of points I want to respond to, and then Sean,
Sorry,
you
dude.
interrupt Brian and make different points, and I
Sorry,
don't know
dude.
what the fuck you guys want to respond to. So I'm trying. But
Yeah.
It's all right.
trying to get a word in. So let me just say, when you look at like the KKK, you can find a grand wizard, you can find his name, you can typically point to the organization in the hierarchy. There is not that for Antifa. There is not an organization per se. In fact, there are people that claim to be Antifa, which in their minds just means anti-fascist, which overall would be a good concept, but then they turn around and act in a very fascist way sometimes.
But the alt-right
there is
doesn't
no-
exist.
Wait, let him
for the same reason.
Let him finish.
There is no coordinated leader. There is no coordinated attack. There is no organization or hierarchy. You can't point me to a leader of Antifa. You can't point me to a game plan or anything that's a specific what they're going to do and what they're going to be doing. It's a bunch of Facebook groups. Black Lives Matter has founders, has an organization. They are an actual organization. They are, I guess, an organization. Antifa. And I've lashed out against Antifa for years on my show. I've ripped them a new asshole multiple times. I don't like the violent behavior. I don't like any of that.
Yeah.
But when Joe Biden says they're an idea, they're a concept, I mean, if he says they're an organization, how do we verify? Who's the leader of the organization? What's their website? What's their headquarters?
Sure.
I could tell you all of that for Proud Boys. I could tell you all of that for the KKK.
Sure.
I could tell you all about that for multiple neo-Nazi groups. I can't tell you that for Antifa. So are they organization or are they just a group of people responding in a certain way that they have no real organizing about them? I don't know that Joe Biden's factually inaccurate when he says that, even though he did say when asked, do you condemn Antifa? He said, yes, anyone who's violent, meaning if you consider yourself anti-fascist, but you're not throwing Molotov cocktails at a CVS, then he's not condemning you.
But don't you agree that should have been his answer on that stage? That should, instead of saying they're an idea, shouldn't you have said exactly that?
Do you think? Yeah, I feel like I would word things better than Joe Biden sometimes. Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian. Brian made a good point on the
alt-right doesn't exist for the same reason, right? That I don't see job titles on there. You have a bunch of people on 4chan that take different names. They pop in like they're using different Pepe memes. It's clear that some have more influence than others. But who's arranging all these things? Who's calling in the swatting? It's just an idea. Like, come on.
What is?
Rose
The
City,
alt-right.
the
I would
alt-right.
say it's just I would say yes. I would say
So-
4chan is an idea. It's not there's not a specific, there is no real organization to it.
Well, 4chan specifically is an organization, right? Because they created a
4chan's a
platform.
website. It's a
Yeah.
social media
Well,
site.
that's what
But
I
the
mean, yeah.
alt-right doesn't exist. So then we have to go back and pull out all of these articles
Brian?
from the alt-right because they're just
Brian,
an idea.
Richard Spencer is the self-proclaimed founder of the alt.
No.
And Anti-Fasc Gordon is also look up Anti-Fasc Gordon on Twitter. You don't think that he's an Antifa leader?
Well,
he absolutely is. There are articles
I would say-
in the
I've
New
never
York
heard-
Times.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, but
Because
Richard
you haven't
Spencer.
looked into
But
it.
Richard Spencer coined the term alt-right. He's never said he's the leader of alt-right.
Right. Look at Andy Knows stuff. He goes into detail about Rose City Antifa.
When I founded this movement or something. I don't know.
No, I think you're thinking of McGinnis and the Proud Boys. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Proud Boys leader right
Maybe.
now is Enrique Barrio. Doesn't sound like a white supremacist to me. right? The Proud Boys are amazingly diverse. They're not even a white supremacist group. They are a Western chauvinist group. They're weird. I don't really like the Proud Boys, but they are not what they're claimed.
Again, so this is the thing, and this was my issue for the whole reason of me wanting to have this conversation, is I kind of agree with you on the Proud Boys. I think they're ridiculous. I think they're unnecessary. I think they're misogynist as fuck. There are not a lot, but there are several black members of the Proud Boys. If they were exclusively white supremacists, that probably wouldn't be the case. Yeah. So I get that. And the people that say that Proud Boys are a white supremacist group, they're probably factually inaccurate. I don't necessarily agree with that. But here's the big takeaway here, guys. Donald Trump talked about David Duke in like the 90s. He talked about him again in an interview in 2004. He talked about him again sometime in 2011, 2012. And then in 2016, when David Duke endorsed Donald Trump for president, he pretended not to know who David Duke was.
Yeah,
isn't that an issue for you?
But being a pussy.
But here's the thing absolutely. And obviously, if he stuck by those, obviously I'd have a problem with that. Joe Biden created the policing laws, the policing, the whole fucking
the 94
system,
crime
the
bill.
94 crime bill, and he was it in Congress or the Senate talking about how these are animals that we need to lock them up. We need to lock these animals up and get these animals off. So I mean, do you stand by that? I mean,
hold on. He didn't create it. Okay,
right.
He was a member of Congress that voted for it with the support of the entire Democratic Black Caucus.
Sure.
He had the support of the Black community.
Sure.
He had Black churches on board with him doing this.
Sure.
He was doing what Black Americans at that time told him would keep their neighborhoods safe. He has later said he thinks it was a mistake and he regrets it.
Sure.
And he's apologized for it.
Fair enough.
Can Trump, have any evidence of Trump learning from his mistake or apologizing for something, or say he learned something from a mistake that he made and people were unintendedly hurt?
Well, I would say
no.
I would
we have one adult running for office, and another one is a narcissistic prick that doesn't seem to care about anybody but himself.
Well, what I would say to the Trump thing is his famous "good fine people on both sides" quote, which is constantly taken out of context, where he literally says there are fine people on both sides, excluding the white supremacists. How come the media never plays that second half of that clip?
The idea is that there are fine people on both sides of the debate of whether the statue should go or whether it should stay.
Right.
Then, when he's referring to all the people there, see, again, there's fine people on both sides of the idea of it should stay, it should go.
Right.
But yet condemned all the white supremacists who were actually there at tiki torches, not caring about the statue, that were starting to start a race war.
Yeah. So
the media's no. The media sensationalizes that shit for sure. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you got to admit, someone being killed in Charlottesville by a white supremacist driving a car through a protest. Mm-hmm. And then our president saying there are fine people on both sides. That's a misstep. That's a mistake.
Sure, he stepped in
poop. To then follow that up with what?
He stepped in poop, right? Like, and you should have been watching where he's going, but it's not.
Yeah, and when you step in poop in the political game, that's going to be used against you. Right. Period.
So we can do the same thing against Joe Biden, calling Antifa an idea. When somebody in the chat here is saying, I've been in Portland, and that Rose City Antifa has been, and the Youth Liberation Front have been organizing riots and general violence for at least 6 years. Yeah. And the FBI is aware of this.
Did you a conservative I had on my show the other day was telling me that he was doing research into Antifa, and did you know that a conservative told me this?
Sure.
He discovered in his research that Russian bots had gotten so good at mimicking Antifa that they were able to schedule protests and rallies that actual Antifa people were showing up to.
Okay. So
if a digital bot can do the same job that a jackass on Facebook can do,
sure,
I'm hard pressed to call that some sort of organizing.
But did you see our post of the flyers?
The issue here, you guys actually just said this. I can't believe it took Biden so long. Guys, there is an interview. I've played the audio on my show multiple times. I don't remember if it was Anderson Cooper or who else, but he speaks right to Trump and says, will you condemn the KKK, this group? And he's like, I don't know anything about those groups. And he's like, I just told you, it's the KKK. They're racist. And he's like, I don't know anything. Send me a list of the groups and I'll say, why couldn't he just say, I condemn the KKK? So he sidesteps it. He pushes back. He says he doesn't know about them. He does the same thing with QAnon. I don't know about this group. I don't know about them, but I know they're against pedophilia. That's a good thing. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And then he goes on Fox News and says,
Sure.
yeah, I condemn white supremacists. So CNN's losing their shit playing their clip of him sidestepping the racist issue,
Right.
while Fox News is playing the clip of Trump condemning white supremacists. And what does that sow?
Yeah.
A lot of confusion, a lot of mistrust about CNN. Donald Trump, it's being said right now that right after the 60 Minutes interview, she asked him, why do you try to discredit the media? Why do you call us fake news? And Trump's response was, I discredit them so they won't believe you when you say things about me. That's what she said he told her. And
Sure.
he's great at doing that by intentionally sidestepping a question and then immediately going on a Fox News and saying the right answer. It causes the division.
Sure.
What kind of leader intentionally misleads people like this?
Sure. Well, what I would say is, I know he was talking about the policing and a lot of the crime stuff, David. But personally, the reason why, I voted Democrat my entire life. I'm 40 now. This will be the first time I vote Republican in my life. And the reason why I'm voting for Trump, it's not because of, the things we've been talking about today. It's because of the things that matter to me, which is the economy, and critical race theory, and different things like that are like that I see every day. Like the small businesses, like in Milwaukee alone. If you look at Yelp, 60% of small businesses have shut down. If you look at critical race theory, we deal with it all the time, like in corporate trainings and in the universities. We're seeing how that stuff is really affecting our youth and now our corporate employees. These things are important to me because these sow division too. Like now, my company alone, we laid off 70% of our staff. We have businesses all around us that are shutting down, that are never coming back. We have people that have worked 30 years in these careers and they're not coming back. And the Democrats want to keep these mandates on us and keep like suffocating these businesses over something that we don't even know if it's going to handle the issue. So, like for me, the economy is number one, and then the critical race theory stuff is definitely number two. But it's hard, man. Like it's such a shitty situation out there for a lot of real families, and we're talking about weird internet shit on the debate. I don't give a shit about QAnon. I know nothing about them. The fact that came up was embarrassing. We need to start talking about people losing their livelihood. That's the bigger issue. And the Democrats are all for lockdowns and forced lockdowns. Look at New York. I mean,
California hasn't fully opened.
A couple of things. I wasn't ignoring you. I was actually sending you a text, Sean.
Oh, sure.
If you want to grab your phone, I sent you a text that's a link to a tweet that I put out with 4 charts on the economy. And I'd love for you to open that up and take a look at it, because
I don't know if
Trump did not do anything massive for our economy. If you look back pick any of the charts. If you look at the very first one, just gross domestic product, the very first one, Obama took over way down here. And you can see this chart, this line goes at the same angle, right? And when Trump takes over, it continues at the exact same rate. And then, the economy falls off because of COVID. And if you look at stock market growth, it's the same thing.
Sure.
It's the same sort of incline. So most of the economists that I've seen, and again, I try to look at multiple news sources, whether you look at unemployment, economic growth, the stock market, whatever, jobs, all of it.
Yeah.
Job growth. I mean, it shows to be that essentially Trump
Sure.
was being able to take credit for the path and the plans that Obama had laid out.
Yeah.
And what tanked the economy, or at least what made 30 million people lose their jobs, is his lack of properly responding to coronavirus in the first place and downplaying it to the American people.
What do you honestly think Biden would have done differently?
I guess my question for you, Sean,
Sure.
is what exact plans did Trump do that changed our economy? Because I don't even really see evidence that it changed any different than if a jar of mayonnaise was president.
Sure.
It did the exact same thing it was doing under Obama.
Sure. So what I would say as far as the trend lines go in the economy, you may absolutely be right as far as trend lines going up. What Trump did initially, it was very tough on China. China's a black hole for us. We're actually losing a shit ton of money. We had the stats on here. We had a general on talking about how China's negatively affected us. So initially, he was very tough on China, and he still is.
As far as the tariffs go,
well, not just the tariffs, but also making sure that we get them to invest back in us, not just that we're investing in them, things like that. So that was number one.
I give Trump credit. I give Trump credit for that as well.
Yeah, but what I'm saying more recently, it's not even Trump, but Republican stance in general. The Republicans want to get these businesses back open, right? And the Democrats want to keep these businesses shut down or reduce. Milwaukee just reduced our capacity to 25%. The Republican.
Sean,
go ahead.
Please know that nobody wants businesses to shut down. Saying that Democrats want businesses to shut down is just a complete straw man.
No, I'm not saying
people want to be safe. We want people to be safe, okay?
Right.
Who are the people that are in public refusing to wear masks, demanding they have a right to walk into a Starbucks, demanding the right that it's like not a law so they don't have to put their mask on? It's largely right-wing conservatives feeling like their civil liberties are being infringed upon because a private company said put a face covering on. They also make you wear a bra and cover your nipples before you walk. You also can't walk into Starbucks with your dirty toes hanging out. Like you have to. They're allowed to make a private policy for their company. It's largely the conservatives pushing back against the mask wearing situation, which is causing the spread of the virus, according to the science and the experts. So maybe if the Republicans would do the loving thing for humanity and put their masks on, we would be able to open safely. But with the numbers skyrocketing because of all the people refusing to wear masks, including Trump, there's no other option but to shut it down because the conservatives won't respect the fact that the mask slows the spread of the virus.
You want to take this one?
Like the data on masks is mixed, right? Like, so I keep hearing like science isn't this thing where everybody agrees, right? At the top levels of science, you get enormous disagreements. I've been to tons of scientific conferences inside of medicine, and the top people in their fields radically disagree on the way forward. And guess what? They all just kind of do different things.
Specifically?
There's like in surgery, right? But on masks specifically, there are some studies that say, yeah, it helps a little bit. There are other studies that say, no, it doesn't help.
Hold on. I may learn something right now. John Hopkins University, the CDC, the NIH, the WHO. We're talking major, globally accepted, credible sources all agree that masks reduce the spread of the disease or the virus. There have been things on
by how much
tests.
Yeah,
what's that?
But it could be an insignificant amount, right? Like I'm sure that some mask has stopped a transmission somewhere. But again, if we are, it's like an ant pushing a tricycle. Like there's no evidence
not at all,
that.
Brian. Not at all, Brian. I guess you haven't seen the study I'm talking about, where they literally have someone sneeze into a black box with it's like infrared or something where it looks green or red whenever they sneeze.
Have you ever sneezed in your mask? I've been in surgery a lot, right? And have you ever sneezed inside your mask? Because I have, in the OR, right? Do you know how nasty it is? It's really nasty. And if you're actually scrubbed in, then you're stuck there. And you're stuck with that nastiness. It really is bad. Thankfully, that's usually not me. I'm not scrubbed in. So if I sneeze on my mask, I can be like, oh shit, I got to get out of here ASAP. I go out into the court. I change my mask. So you're telling me somebody sneezes, they're going to have to take that shit off. It's going to get everywhere. The droplet stuff is enough to hang in there.
I wasn't finished with my point. You interrupted me, and you're arguing against something I would have never said. So let me get this out. I promise. There were studies that showed people sneezing into a box and how far it went, and then they were sneezing into a mask, and it stopped like 95% of it. So what the point was, just regular talking the big particles. Imagine it being a big particle, and then the virus is kind of sitting inside of it, right? If the droplet comes out of your mouth and floats through the air, at some point this bubble pops and just the little virus is floating and can get into your mouth. But if my mask is covering my face, it stops it while the droplet is still large, and it never even gets close to you to fall apart and give you the virus. That's what they demonstrated in the study.
Yes.
Sure.
I'm not.
If that
I'm not
this is
telling-
predicated on
I'm not telling people to sneeze in their masks. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking
okay,
about.
that's it. This is assumed that there's droplet transmission, right? So if we use contact precautions and droplet, yes, then then masks could help. There's no evidence this aerosol transmission.
Droplet transmission.
It's airborne.
Coronavirus?
Like what I'm saying is you could stop a droplet transmission that way. But if there's enough virus that's aerosolized and airborne, you're going to get it anyways. Sure. It's like I don't if I shoot you 20 times and only 3 bullets hit, did you get hit or not?
Well,
Brian, Brian, I feel like you're straw manning the thing. Like I'm saying that masks will shut down all of coronavirus. It's about saving the most lives possible.
I'm saying that they have
the most. It's about doing the most good possible, and it's about opening as safely as possible.
Sure.
Why not open things, but mandate that everybody wears masks?
Okay,
the problem is there are so many conservatives that are saying you can't tell me I have to wear a mask, and they refuse to wear it.
What I'll say is this. So I'm gonna go ahead. The mask thing to me, I wear my mask everywhere I go. And I'm not wearing it for me. I'm wearing it for the people that are working, the frontline workers, right? That's why I'm wearing it. And I don't care about wearing a mask. That's fine. The issue is when we're telling businesses they can only have 25% capacity, or some businesses can't operate at all, those businesses are not coming back. So I'm totally fine with wearing a mask as long as we can start opening up the economy. But that's not happening.
I agree.
And this is happening. But this is happening under Democratic leadership. I mean, we just rolled back. Yeah.
What?
Oh, absolutely.
You're blaming the Democrats for this?
Yes, 100%. Like the Democratic mayors and governors are the ones that are keeping these businesses. Milwaukee, it just happened again. We rolled back all the businesses' capacity at 25%. 25%. 25%. We rolled it back.
I know Christy Nome in South Dakota.
Right.
Like, less social distancing,
Guys,
more
I'm
hunting.
I'm in California under Gavin Newsom. I know.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to go bowling in 9 months, 8 months. It's driving me crazy.
Right.
I know.
But we just had
the bowling center I want to go. The bowling center I want to go to has dividers up.
Yeah.
They have plexiglass. They have signs on the door that say must wear a mask to enter. They're going to skip a lane in between each person, and they're still telling us we can't do it. Yet I can eat outside. Some restaurants have patios that are basically inside with a missing wall.
Exactly.
And I can sit 6 feet from that guy who's chewing on something and sipping water and laughing and coughing, but I can't be in a bowling alley with all these protections. I don't agree with everything Gavin Newsom is doing, but do you guys acknowledge that Trump making fun of people wearing masks and downplaying it and telling people it's not that big of a deal and saying it's just going to magically go away to make his political self look better? Do you acknowledge that he made the problem worse?
What I would say is people have to make up their own minds, and Trump doesn't tell everybody what to say and do. But what I would say, so Trump obviously could have phrased that better. And again, I'm not against the mask. I'll wear the mask.
He could have led by example, Sean.
Right. I agree.
I mean, look, you put a mask on because it's a responsible thing to do.
Sure.
He's the president of the United States.
I agree.
He should lead by example, because then it leads to conversations like this with Brian, where Brian, despite the CDC, Johns Hopkins University, the NIH, and the World Health Organization all confirming that masks reduce the spread, Brian's willing to sit here on this show and say,
it's their policy.
Can I just
how science works. There's policy and then there's science.
Can I finish this? So I agree Trump could have handled that better. Now, we also have to agree that the Democrats could have handled the Summer of Love and the Black Lives Matter protests and people not wearing masks and gathering thousands of people. They could have came out strongly against that better as well. Because, even though we're outside, we have people on top of one another, tackling one another. I mean, we had businesses failing. We have people not able to see their loved ones in nursing homes or in the hospital while they're dying.
Listen,
but we have thousands of people going outside without masks, doing crazy shit.
So that's an obvious thing to deal with. And again, I don't know how much you're going to believe if we're on the I can't believe what Brian just said. I'm actually still just in awe that that's even your position. But it calls into question the rest of the discussion. But I'll give it a shot. If people are outside, I agree they should have been further apart. There were several protests, several videos of protests showing people socially distancing and wearing masks. There's a lot of those. We can't compare that to an indoor Trump rally with 15,000 people where maybe 9 people had masks on out of 15,000. It's obvious that what Trump is doing is far more dangerous. And I feel like what's happening, and I feel like what happens on the right a lot, and specifically with your group, with Myth Informed, I feel like what you guys have done is look, we both have crazies on our side, okay? We both do. And there are very fine people on both sides.
We're going to cut
I feel
that.
like what you guys have done is you look at our crazies, the ones that reasonable liberal people also condemn. We're saying don't throw the trash can through the police car window. That's not going to help our cause.
Right.
There are Black Lives Matter protesters running up to white people that are spray painting and setting fires and saying, they're not going to put your face on the news when you do that. Stop doing that shit. Taking the spray paint from the people and destroying it. There are responsible people within our movement, within the liberal ideology, doing the right thing and condemning the extremists who are causing problems. Mm-hmm. You elected your extremist to be your leader. He's not a fringe guy. He is divisive. He is inciting violence. He is constantly trying to pit people against one another for his political gain. He's constantly lying. He's not trustworthy to handle any future crises. So we both have our fringes. The problem is you guys are voting for your fringe. Okay. You're voting for your crazy when we're trying to control ours and condemn it.
So you don't think that Obama was at all divisive? Like
not like Trump.
Right, like when he supports critical race theory straight up, when he says Trayvon could be my kid, when the professor Brian, was breaking into his thing, he blames systemic racism, not that a neighbor might be concerned that somebody might be breaking in.
Brian, if your response to everything I just said about Donald Trump being on the fringes is to go back in time and play whataboutism with Barack Obama, it's clear that you do not have a defense for your position.
No. Here, so what you're saying is that Donald Trump is the problem. This is why we're polarized. Why not Donald Trump is the coroner? Yeah. And that politics are dead because things were so divisive. You're thinking that things got bad just when he got elected or when he started to run. That's not true. Things were getting bad before that.
I never said that. I never said that. That's a complete straw man of my position. Once again,
what I'm saying is,
Donald Trump is a symptom. I think Donald Trump is
divisive.
Donald Trump is a symptom of the problem. He's like a cyst.
But he's not an extremist.
Now he's causing. I can't hear you when I'm talking.
But he's not an extremist. Go on. Sorry.
Okay. I think he is. You said Donald Trump's not an extremist?
No. He's an asshole, but he's not an extremist.
Well, I guess it depends on what issue we're talking about.
Right.
I think I never said that Donald Trump was the problem or the cause of the problem. I think Donald Trump is a symptom of the problem. He's like a cyst that grew out of the arm of America, but now he's causing his own side effects.
Sure.
He's causing his own problems, and he's definitely making it worse.
Sure.
At this point in time, we need someone with integrity. So you may not agree with Joe Biden's policies, but I think deep down, if you guys, and I think you do care about science, you care about reality, you care about people not being duped into bad ideas, well then the next crisis that happens,
sure,
whatever it may be, who do you trust to surround himself with scientists and listen to them?
Sure. So let me ask,
Trump.
Can I ask? Okay, so I agree with you, David. Let's stay on Trump. If we want to talk about Trump, I don't know why we're talking about Biden. Let me ask you a question. When coronavirus first came out and the whistleblowers in China were releasing the information to the world in spite of actual threats to their lives, one of them died, the other one's still missing. And they're trying to get this information out. The CCP obviously is trying to contain it and hide it. and then eventually blamed us for it. When that information was coming out, Donald Trump made a decision. He decided to close the Chinese borders, which, in hindsight, was 100% the right thing to do.
I'm sorry, though, Sean. I'm sorry, Sean. This was fact-checked by Daniel Dale. He did not do that. He closed certain types of travel from China.
Sure.
But there were still tens of thousands of people coming in and out of the border.
American citizens.
American citizens.
He didn't shut down the border.
Well, okay, so he should have. You're saying he should have shut down and said any American citizen that happens to be in China is now stuck there, and he shouldn't have made an exception for American citizens. Come on.
No, what I'm saying is you can't have it both ways. You can't say he shut down borders to China, but he also let Americans come home from China. Well, no, you can't have both. So did he shut down the borders or not? I'm not arguing on what he should have done or what he ought to have done. I'm saying that this is what he did.
Okay, so then if your mask
you cannot say truthfully that he shut down the borders from China because he didn't. When tens of thousands of people are traveling back and forth, that's not shutting down the border.
Your mask argument is toast now. Because unless we stop all transmission and we don't reduce it, like masks are supposed to reduce it, not stop it, you don't think that this reduced it? Because you can't have it both ways on this one.
No, I didn't. That would suddenly make the entire mask argument. Brian,
okay. The masks are supposed to reduce it, right? So you don't think limiting travel would reduce it?
Dude, you're just like a fallacy generator right now. Like you can't just. This is complete false equivocation. You can't just grab or equivocation fallacies. You can't just grab one argument and say if this is wrong, then your entire other argument is trash. That's just not the way argumentation works. I don't know where you're getting that.
So
you can say Donald Trump slowed down the transmission by slowing down travel to China.
That's what we're saying.
You can't say he shut off.
Sure.
Guys, can I finish the statement, please? I'm saying you can't say he shut it down if he just slowed it down. Say he slowed it down and we can move forward. These absolute broad brush statements are where I have issues with your organization
restricted.
right now.
He restricted the travel to China. Not shut down. Restricted.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
fine.
So let me ask you a question, David. With that being said, and you can go back and look at the Democrats and the media's coverage of this. They're calling him xenophobic and racist and all these
Joe
things.
Biden said
so.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Which we have the film of that. So let me ask you a question. A, do you agree with their statements? And B, this is the question I want all the people to explain to me. What could he have done differently?
Okay, first of all, not played it down to the American people. He could have came out in February whenever he told Bob Woodward that it gets transmitted through the air and that elderly people are more susceptible, but young people can also get it. He should have told that to the American people. He should have immediately said, I want you to wear a mask to stay safe and to keep your neighbors safe. He should have been in public wearing a mask. He should have been doing everything he could to get PPE to every hospital that needed it instead of negotiating with governors on the phone and talking shit about them. There are a lot of things, but that would just be the beginning of it. He should have never suggested that we could ingest disinfectant.
Sure.
He was irresponsible the entire way across the board. So you tell me something he did, I could probably give you a better plan that I think I would have done or that Biden would have done, including listening to the doctors, not bringing in a fringe doctor. What's that? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. He was talking to me. He was talking to me. Go ahead, David.
Okay, in my AirPod, when you guys talk, I just hear squelch noises while I'm talking. I can't hear you.
No
so
worries.
you know, I'm not just being a dick and talking over you. I literally can't hear you.
No, it's fine.
And I'm typically trying to look at my camera instead of your faces, so I don't know that you're talking. So I'll try to look at you more. But accusing the FDA, he accused the FDA of being a part of the deep state. He put pressure on the CDC to change their statistics despite the data, so that more schools would open more often. He openly called Dr. Fauci an idiot and disagreed with Dr. Birx. He brought in a doctor who is not an epidemiologist or have any experience with virality, and he brought him in to be his primary advisor. There's a bunch of stuff Trump did that is irresponsible and I think led to the death of thousands of people.
Okay.
Let me just say one thing. First of all, I'll let you take the rest of this, Brian. But first of all, with Fauci did make the statement early on that masks are ineffective. So I just want to throw that out there. Go ahead, Bray.
Yeah.
I don't think he said they were hold on. I have to respond to that. I don't believe he said they were ineffective. If he did, I think it was a mistake, and then he learned from that later. But I don't think he said that.
No, he did.
What he said was, we don't want you to go buy them. And then later, he admitted being slightly misleading to us on purpose.
Yeah.
Because what he ended up saying was, we needed our masks for the frontline workers who were in the room with 15 other people who definitely had COVID-19. And we needed that. And people were buying hundreds of surgical masks and N95s, and regular, people at the hospital couldn't get them. They were putting trash bags over their faces.
So
they got to walk in the room with somebody they knew. So I felt a little weird by Fauci by that one thing.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has 20,000 recorded lies. I mean, it's so apples and oranges. I can't even begin to speak on it.
But let me just finish that thought then. So Fauci did it because he didn't want people to panic and start buying a bunch of crazy shit, right?
Not the panic word. He wanted to make sure they had plenty of masks for the people who were on the front lines in medicine. And then while he was saying that, they were testing cloth alternatives. They were testing all sorts of things. They were testing putting a T-shirt over your mouth. They were testing lots of stuff. When the test came out that cloth mask worked, Fauci came out and said, put a T-shirt over your face, wear a cloth mask. And then all these masks started being produced.
Sure.
And that helped. And I think it was a good thing that Fauci did that, even though it kind of bothers me that he was a little dishonest. I understand why he needed it. Trump's underlying reason for not wanting people to panic, there's no real reason behind it. There's no real people panicked anyway. People panicked when the you walked into Walmart and there were no toilet paper or paper towel left to buy.
That's right.
There was a panic. So Trump's reason was not tied to anything specific to save lives. My suspicion is he didn't want you to panic and see the stock market tank because this is an election year and he wants to run on the economy.
Okay. Yes, he did want to run the economy. But no, Fauci said specifically that not only was he didn't want you to wear a mask, that if you wore a mask, it could actually make it worse. Go check it out. He said that it could actually make it worse. And they're saying if you do mishandle it, this is true. I mean, they talk of there's the way to put on masks.
Okay, and then how soon did he correct himself?
I don't know, a couple months with the idea. Remember, hand washing was don't touch your face and hand washing. These are contact precautions, right? So
because we thought it was surface, right?
Yeah, right. So they were doing that at first, right? So anyways, okay, look, I'm fine.
They'd never seen anything like this either, right? They'd never seen anything like this. So it was a learning curve. But you're talking about one mistake that Fauci made.
Well, no, I'm not saying.
So he gets to be called an idiot, or he gets to be
you were saying
railed against.
Your argument was he should have said we should wear masks right away. So I'm saying if you're gonna make that, you have to you'd have to say June, right? You can't say masks right away. So I'm just challenging that.
Right. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Let me rephrase that. He should have said to wear masks as soon as the experts around him said that wearing masks was the best way to prevent the spread.
So that's one. Secondly, on the Bob Woodward thing, right? That's in February. Why didn't Bob Woodward report this to the American people? Right? I'll tell you why. It's not because Bob Woodward is evil. It's because Bob Woodward thought Trump's just riffing. He's just talking shit like he usually does. Trump says stuff that comes out his ass. I've got the best. I had the biggest inauguration ever, bigger than Barack Obama's. Everybody knows that's not true. Everyone knows Trump is just riffing and talking out his butt. This is why otherwise Woodward would have said, hey, guys, you got to know. Trump wouldn't have known this at that time. Nobody knew it, right?
Yes, he did.
No.
Yes, he did.
So who would have told him?
There are
Xi Jinping?
Brian, there are White House briefings that have confirmed Trump was briefed on this as he was saying it. Mm-hmm. He right before that in early February, Trump was briefed, and then he had the interview with Bob Woodward.
In the Senate, people knew about this too. Why weren't any Democrats screaming and yelling at the same time? Oh my God, we've got a major pandemic. They weren't. Nobody knew,
including the WHO,
including top Democrats that were aware.
Brian, the Senate was not getting the briefings that Donald Trump was. Donald Trump had special knowledge as president of the United States. Okay, and by the way, he wasn't just bullshitting. He flat out told Bob Woodward, I'm playing it down and I'm going to continue to play it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did. And more people were getting infected. And Trump just said, we're rounding the curve. It'll go away. It'll just disappear. He knew he was lying the entire time.
No,
and then whenever he was questioned about it recently at a town hall, why did you play it down? When he's on tape saying, I played it down and I'm going to continue to play it down. Trump looked right at that woman and said, I played it up.
Look, and you're taking Trump seriously?
Anything anymore.
So we're just taking Trump seriously? I thought we all knew he just talks crap all the time. I don't believe, like, I look at Trump's policy, right? If some bully is saying, I'll beat you up, but he never ever makes a move towards you, you're really scared of him, right? Like, actions speak louder than words. Trump talks. I'm just not afraid of this.
But what I would say though too there,
and also
is,
the other thing, PPE. He got the PPE where it's going to go.
What I would say is, yeah, he did. He did. The respirators and stuff. What I would say with that though is, we could say Trump knew all this stuff, but here's the thing. Here's the reality though, David. You could say that. The reason I don't believe it is we still don't understand this thing. We like the CDC came out the other day, like last week, 2 weeks ago or whatever, and said it's not airborne. There's constantly new data on this thing.
Hold on. Does it not bother you guys that Trump is putting pressure on the CDC? So the CDC is filled with scientists and doctors doing tests, and they release their results publicly.
Sure.
As the Center for Disease Control.
Mm-hmm.
Does it bother you that Trump was putting pressure on scientists to change their public website and recommendations for his political benefit?
So these are the same CDC scientists that promised that instead of using Korea's COVID test, which we could have early, and the administration wanted to do, the CDC said, no, we're going to make our own test. And they effed it up. They effed it up badly. Do I doubt Trump for distrusting the CDC when Korea could have got us the stuff right away? Yeah. And the administration wanted to do that. Guess what? The CDC are government people. They're valuable too. Like, they're fighting him. Yes. No, I don't have a problem with them distrusting him.
Brian.
They screwed it up.
Your entire I can't hear you. I'm sorry. It's getting really choppy.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Brian, your entire argument seems to be based on whataboutisms. I think if you go back and watch this, what you'll find is I bring up a very valid problem that I have with Trump and how he's done something dangerous.
Sure.
And rather than either saying, yes, that was dangerous, he shouldn't have done that, or defending why he did it, about 80% of the time you just go, what about this? What about that guy? What about this person? It's just deflecting from the reality of what's going on with Donald Trump. I don't know that you just have an agenda or if you actually have reasons to vote for Trump, but I'm seeing a lot of whataboutisms and not a real reason to trust Trump to do anything.
Well, okay, we're gonna end it there because we're almost at an hour and a half. I guess the closing though, which is important because obviously you're voting for Biden, David. We're voting for Trump. The important thing here is that we could still talk, right? We could still have these conversations, even though we can agree to disagree. I think we're missing that in society right now. So, like, I'm worried either way the election goes. Like, if Trump gets in, what the chaos that's going to ensue. If Biden gets in, we have to start being able to have these conversations, even though we don't agree. And I think that's, hopefully that's the takeaway with the show. Or with any discourse. Like, we have to have these things. I learned something today. Hopefully, David, you learned something, or at least, where we're coming from a little bit more. I think that's the bottom line. We can go like another 3 hours. We got to do this again, David, because there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
If I could before I go, I want to let people know that on November 7th, I'm doing a live 12-hour broadcast on my website.
Holy shit!
To benefit a survivor of sex trafficking, and she was a listener to my show for a long time. She was raised in a fundamentalist religious household. At one point, she was actually beaten for listening to my show. And she's in her early 20s now. She's in a homeless shelter. We're trying to get her moved out into community living. And so anybody who wants to help out with that situation, November 7th, It's a 12-hour broadcast from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And, anything anybody can chip in would be great because we're trying to help her transition into a better life. So
where's that going to be broadcast?
Before I go.
Yeah, where's that going to be broadcast?
What's that?
Where's that broadcast?
It's on Spreaker, but it's going to be on my website. You can go to davidcsmalley.com. There'll be a player right on the main page to just click play right there. So that's where we're taking everybody. If you happen to know about Spreaker and you have the app, you can stream it right on your phone on Spreaker.
Yeah, and also check him out, David C. Smalley on Twitter. David, we got to do this again. There's so much more to cover. We do have one super chat. We'll get that before we go. But yeah, there's so much more to cover here. I really want to get into the white fragility stuff and the CRT stuff with you. That's
Me too. You guys might be surprised that I might agree with you more in some of those areas.
Okay,
sometimes.
that's the thing for me. Like ultimately, is I don't want us to be divided. We got to stop dividing ourselves on race, on political issues, on all this stuff. Like we used to be able to agree to disagree on a lot of the stuff, and now unfortunately, violence is being used, and our politicians and our political figures aren't necessarily calling it out. That's what my biggest concern is. We should never be using that. But I just want to say one thing before I forget. So I put in the description, we're talking about Better Discourse 2. So we are going to do a 2021 event, and it's going to be in Kenosha. So we are working out the speakers and the topics and all that stuff. But yeah, so stay tuned to that. We should have some announcements very soon. Brian, go ahead.
Okay, this is great. But real quick before we super, Tom Leach said, "Much respect for coming on, though it's hard to find people on the left who are willing to defend their positions." So yes, thank you.
Yes,
Miles, this is great. I'm gonna want to be able to say it with a straight face. Miles Kinslow says, "Hey guys, voting for Trump. Does anyone have a white card I can borrow since Biden is king of the blacks?"
Oh boy. Oh, that's a whole nother. That's a whole nother. thing.
That's pretty good.
That's
Miles. You make me laugh.
But no, I agree. And David, that is the toughest thing, especially, when we are lining up the events and stuff. Getting people on the left to come and have these conversations is a challenge for us. I can't tell you how hard it is. And I don't know why that is. I think we should be able to have these conversations even though we don't agree. But it's always a challenge.
I'll be happy to do it if you want a reasonable voice on the left. I'll be happy to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. And this is Jinx, by the way, everyone. I had to hold him. He's only four months old.
And I'd love to have we should do this again on COVID because there's more I have to say, and I don't have all of my facts and figures and studies in front of me, but I can have that available.
Yeah.
And I can make the case where I don't think that science, I think the mask could help, but I think it's just like a marginal help, like maybe 1 or 2%. And also talking about what I thought the real danger in COVID is the governors of New Jersey and New York. If you're going to pillory somebody for COVID deaths, it should be them and not Trump. And I can make that case pretty well too.
I got to stop.
So I think that'd be
I think as far as the mask thing goes, I think all of the numbers just don't agree with you. So if you have special information about, masks only saving 1 or 2%, you might want to let the World Health Organization, the NIH, and the CDC know because you have information they don't. I don't know why we would challenge something that's just not that big of a deal. Put the mask on. Just wear it. Like, right. What's the big deal?
I just wear the hijab. What's the big deal?
That is about oppression, and that is about controlling someone's body. This is about saving lives, Brian. That's another straw man and an equivocation fallacy.
But a fundamentalist Muslim might say this is about saving rapes. If they don't wear the hijab, we'll reduce rapes. You could. They will make that argument,
Brian.
Okay,
Brian.
But anyways,
that is just completely absurd.
We can get into
We should
that.
leave it there because that's a dangerous territory to go into, and it's actually another equivocation fallacy. But we've got to stop at some point.
Okay,
I can't play ref all night.
Well, no, that's fine.
I have a mask on my website for sale that says "I wear this because I love you."
Right,
and that's what it's about. This is a true test for humanity right now because we can always do something for ourselves. If we were to say the mask protects you 100% from getting it, everybody would be wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we say wear a mask to protect the person next to you, that's a real test for humanity. How many people actually love their neighbors? How many people actually are real humanists and will give a damn to even slow down the spread? It won't get rid of it altogether, but if we can save some lives, why not? Just wear the damn mask, and then let's let's live another day to keep having these discussions and debate policy. But if people are dying by the hundreds of thousands, we're losing human beings that might be able to solve the next crisis. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. Just wear the mask.
Right. And what I'm not saying don't wear your mask. I followed the policy. That's the policy. That's what I do. But it doesn't mean that I have to believe that they help. That's what I'm saying. But we should have that discussion.
Science, I think it's the responsible thing to do. If the scientists are saying that's the way to go, then much like the religious discussions I have on my show, what evidence can you bring to the table that shuts down the science we do have, right?
And I can provide that. I'd love to do it sometime where we sit down and I can show you the data that's saying that can point and saying, look, this really it's just not solid.
Why don't you reach out to an epidemiologist and bring them on and have that discussion with them?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fine. I mean, I could do that with them too. But I've had these discussions with doctors too. I mean, like that's the thing in medicine, and this I see this all the time. Two people that I respect immensely, and they wildly disagree on something. And who's right? So
I agree. I understand. Yep,
the science is not clear on this.
But there is a general consensus in the scientific medical community right now that masks work.
There's a policy that we should wear a mask, and I'm willing to follow the policy.
And there is general consensus from the medical community that informed that policy to exist.
Okay. There's a school of thought that says it helps. Yes. So, but anyways, that's fine. But we should have that sometime. It would be fun. But I really do appreciate you coming on. Sorry for interrupting. Like sometimes this is why in person is so much better, because then if I interrupt, we can hear each other. So I apologize on some of that. I kind of just I act like we're right in the same room. I wish we were.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not sure if I did that to you or not. I'm sure I did. I'm sure we talked over each other, but that's one of the things we have to deal with remote discussions. When you guys do this thing in Kenosha, I'll be happy to be a part of it. We'll be in person. Maybe we can make that happen. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, and nobody started unbuckling their pants, which is good. That's a Jeffrey Tobin joke. Ha ha. Anyways, David, thanks everyone for hopping in and chatting. We appreciate you guys.
All right. Take care, guys.
We're off. Okay.
We off?